Hello and welcome to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. The Late Late Show is the headline in the game pullout in today's Times after a weekend with 8 stoppage time goals and bucket loads of drama. Eddie Nketiah's 97th minute winner ended Liverpool's perfect start and sent Crystal Palace second in the Premier League. A 96th minute Gabriel header skewered Newcastle United to boost Arsenal's title credentials. And after more late goals and big results for Brentford, Brighton, Bournemouth and Sunderland, who are up to 5th, we'll be asking if the Premier League has ever been stronger. Plus, before a ball was even kicked this weekend, Graham Potter was sacked by West Ham United. And we'll be discussing if Nuno Espirito Santo is the right man to reverse the East Londoners' fortunes. I'm Gregor Robertson, and joining me in the studio today we have the Times' very own Gary Jacob, the former Chelsea and Aston Villa striker and Times columnist Tony Cascarino. And joining us down the line from Newcastle, we are also joined by the Times' Northern football correspondent Martin Hardy. Guys, what a weekend of football! I'll be honest, I did Thursday's show, and Tom's on holiday, I'm in the chair here. And I was like, I'm not sure what we're going to talk about today. So I bet this weekend, we haven't got time for it all, Tone.
Yeah, well, as soon as you lose, Manchester United lose, Liverpool lose, Chelsea lose, Arsenal go to Newcastle and win. Spurs are behind in their game, but get a late equaliser.
Sack manager.
Graham Potter obviously went as well. Football is never predictable, is it, in any shape or form?
No. Well, I think the first place to start, Martin, good to have you on the show. I'm sorry, we're not going to start with your game. We'll come to that. We'll start the second half with that.
Ignored in the north as usual.
Not at all. I think because today, as I said, it's a big weekend for a lot of the kind of middle classes, and Palace are the ones leading that this season. Massive win. Eddie Nketiah scored with virtually the last kick of the game to give Palace what I think we'd agree was a deserved victory.
Totally deserved, yeah.
Federico Chiesa, 87th minute equalised, looked like he'd salvaged a point for Liverpool, but what a moment for Palace, who not only cling to second, Gary, but they're unbeaten in 18 games in all competitions.
Phenomenal. I mean, when you watch the two teams playing the Community Shield, the first 10-15 minutes, Liverpool were all over them. They scored and you thought they're going to kind of go away with it. And Glasner found his way into that game and found a way to get at Liverpool in that game. Munoz got at Kirkes. And it was almost a carbon copy on Saturday. He said on his press conference on Friday, I know how Liverpool play, I know their set pieces. And he really executes it perfectly because the pressing was perfect, the use of the wings backs was perfect, the getting into Konate, finding the weakness in him was perfect. Everything was perfect. They stopped Salah, they diagonal balls into Salah. Mitchell did a very good job on him, and everything kind of came to plan. I mean, the only surprise was they weren't 2 or 3, 4 up at half time, really. I mean, Liverpool was sort of fortunate to even be in it. But to be fair to Slot, he made the changes at half time, and they were a much better. They actually stopped it in the second half, and they were a much better team. And they had the chances obviously to equalise and then before obviously losing it. So, but
you referenced the system there. I mean, that's the big thing. That's the thing that stands out. Like, everyone knows their job to a T.
Everyone knows their job to a T, and he's improved all the players in the system. Mateta, who for his first couple of years you weren't sure about, he's improved him tremendously in terms of leading the line, but also the goals. Mitchell at left back, who you're not sure, but now he's much. And Glasner said before Christmas, I want Mitchell to be better in possession. Last week he's praising him for being brave and getting that volley against West Ham. It was him that actually was part of the first goal. He won the corner. It was a disputed corner, but he won the corner. And you thought when they made the signings this summer that maybe he might end up losing his plays or not plays frequently, but he's really raised his game. Kamada, another one who's kind of took. I think the overriding theme is that and we did a sort of piece on this. Glasner's quite an impatient guy, and he admits that as his strength and his weakness. But he's been very patient and allowed certain players to find their feet. He's allowed Kamada to find his feet. He's allowed Mitchell to find his feet. Will Hughes does a good job when he's got in there, and it's the unsung heroes separately to what Eze was doing before he left, and Gahey. Chris Richards a year ago wasn't in the team because they signed Chalobah. Come January, Chelsea pulled Chalobah back, and he's been phenomenal. He was excellent in the cup final, and he's been he made a mistake on the weekend, although he might say maybe the ball came off Salah's hand, and that's kind of why but he was excellent. So, and I think you're right. Conte played that system, and Chris Coleman played that system. Bale used to say it with Wales when he played it with that system, when he had Ramsey and Bale. Coleman used to say, when he had Ramsey and Bale in behind either Vokes or Hal Robson-Kanu, Bale would say about that system that everyone knows the system we play, but we know it better. And you feel like with Glasner, it's exactly the same thing. Everyone knows what they're going to do, but you've got to stop them. You've got to stop Munoz's runs. The timing of his runs are so good.
Cass, you wrote about Liverpool and words today. We'll come to Liverpool, but first of all, Palace, just so impressive.
Yeah, and as I'd echo what Gary said, absolutely spot on. I would echo the fact there's also a lot of players at Crystal Palace have joined the club or have come through at the system that have got a point to prove. And it feels like every position, whether it's Dean Henderson in goal, who was a Manchester United goalkeeper, went to Sheffield United, ends up at Palace, has done really well. You go through the team, it's literally every position. Mitchell, likewise. You look at Richards in the centre-half position. You look at Adam Walton coming in from Blackburn as a championship player, having something to prove. Mateta, Gary's already spoke about him. Again, Mateta, in my opinion, is probably the most improved player I've ever watched. I've ever seen. Have I watched Mateta 2 years ago and the one I'm witnessing now? Completely different. He's Mela Sarr.
Big part of that though with Mateta is the system. It's like he was really isolated a lot under previous managers.
Yes, but people join him.
Now he's got players up beside him quickly.
Sarr's a prime example of, this is the Sarr that scored a brace at Vicarage Road against Liverpool and tore Liverpool apart a good few moons ago. I saw him in the Championship on a few occasions and he felt like he wasn't the same player. Crystal Palace have got him in at quite a low fee, and he absolutely fits their system perfectly because he's lightning quick, and again he's a player that's having to prove a point. You literally go through every position on the pitch at Crystal Palace. It's the same story of players having to listen to a manager that's improving them, but they're also listening and instruction, and they play again. If you look at teams that have played that formation, I said to you boys off air, Man United play the same system, yeah? Which one of the Man United players in the back line would you take over a Palace player? Any of them? Goalkeeper you can add in as well. Would you take the goalkeeper at Man United over Henderson? I would say the 5 are all better at Palace than they are at Manchester United, and including the goalkeeper 6. And you might even go into midfield. If you did a composite between Crystal Palace and Manchester United, I think most people would take more Palace players.
Martin, you cover a team in Newcastle who, again, we have the sort of same conversation about they look brilliantly coached, well drilled. It's been a slightly difficult start to the season for Newcastle, but in Oliver Glasner, it's the same sort of traits, isn't it? Great organisation, remarkable industry, and as I say, like everyone knows their job.
We're gonna come to West Ham, and the game changes and it's more scientific and there's more thought. But then you see a club that jumps from a completely different manager to a completely different manager just because he's available. So why, if West Ham were truly ambitious and wanted to turn this round, why have they not tried to fight to get Crystal Palace as manager? Why have they not done something really bold rather than Nuno's available? He doesn't play the West Ham style. He's not somebody that we probably would have chosen, but because we're in a bit of a panic, it'll cost the club probably 20 million quid. Glasner's doing a great job. I'm not being disrespectful to Crystal Palace, but the bigger clubs will now start circling over because he's done such a good job. And bear in mind, it was a really difficult summer for him. How close he came to losing his captain on the final day of the window. One of the key players there, you've not really touched upon, I think Adam Wharton's a great player, and spoken to Tony Mowbray about how good he was when he was 15 and 16 at Blackburn, and he makes a great difference. The organisation is hugely important. I still think we're seeing a Liverpool team that's trying to itself adjust to the new players that they've signed. You've mentioned there Konate. The contrast between him and Mark Gay is staggering. Konate looks like he's kind of during a game busy trying to find out which part of Madrid he wants to move to next summer. Mark Gay's come back in and slotted in as this consummate professional. Why everybody you talk to said this is a player that's going to get better and better. So within there, but yes, you can see a coach that works very hard, keeps his structure, when, funny enough, I was at the Doncaster game at the start of Crystal Palace's FA Cup run. Doncaster Rovers main stand is freezing cold of a night game, and he came in after the game, takes his coat off, sits chatting to everybody, really, and from what I was told after the game, spends time with the Doncaster Rovers coach and staff in the manager's office, and is embracing the culture of English football, and you can see the benefits for what he's doing for his team. As I said, not being disrespectful to Crystal Palace, but at a time when there's not very many good managers around, he is one that I think during this season people of clubs with higher reputations will start circling for.
Gary, if presuming they can keep hold of Glasgow, what's possible for Palace this season? I mean, they're obviously in the Conference League.
Yeah, I think he wouldn't go mid-season. I think that'd be too difficult, and not only for compensation, but also I think he's made clear that your contract's honoured. He made clear on Friday, even with Gay, he said you sign a contract. No one puts a gun to your head when they ask you to go and sign a contract, and therefore you stick to it. So I think his view is he'll stick to the contract. But the last 2 summers where he's been, he's wanted early deals and they haven't done it, and that's frustrated him to the point of, I think he would deny that he threatened to walk out on the last day with the Gay episode, but
he wasn't happy.
But he wasn't happy, and I think listeners can read between the lines of what I'm saying here. So I think get the end of it. He's going to have a much bigger job on his plate. He won the Europa League with Eintracht Frankfurt, and I think he's going to. And he showed that he's such a good technician of a coach, and also a good man manager as well in terms of it. And he's managed all, like Martin says, he's managed all the kind of issues and things so well, and he could have had quite a nasty summer because he had lost Eze, Gahey thing, new players coming in, late deals, and actually he's it's such an impressive start, isn't it?
I mean, you go through all the data, all you hear, and we all know people in football clubs, and they go through all the small margins and they talk about every little detail. And then you come to this guy and you think, his team are quite simplistic in everything they do. They keep a lot of clean sheets, don't they? They're decent at keeping a clean sheet. They offer threats when they go forward. They're a very tight unit when they lose the ball. They get players to, intercept and win the ball back. They just do all the really good things that you need to have in a successful team. I mean, I laugh because I'm looking at Crystal Palace third in the league at the moment, and I don't think anybody wants to play them thinking, I've got Palace next. It's amazing how it's worked so well for the football club. Under normal circumstances, it should be a chaotic, carnage going on at the football club, and it's absolutely opposite.
I mean, there's also carnage off the field because they had their old issues with the ownership in the summer. Dougie Freedman, obviously, he's left, although he was helping out in the summer. They've got Matt Hobbs coming in, and Dougie was instrumental in bringing some of these players to the club. So it'd be interesting how Matt Hobbs gets on and whether he can kind of have the same success as Dougie's had in sort of finding these unpolished gems. And I suppose Dougie shows that players like you, Tony, who came from the lower leagues, there are players there. There are players there. Moyes has been able to find them. How many clubs actually go and look down there? Tottenham looked at Walton, but they never go and did it.
Do you know one of the big things, and Martin, you could bring you in this on it as well, is that so often the big clubs who will rather let a player go, say Van Dijk went from Celtic to Southampton, and the big club hasn't gone in for them, then they go, maybe we'll pay 50 million. If he goes for 18, it's fine, but we might be prepared to pay 50 down the line. See how he does at Southampton. It feels like there's that logic going on at the very biggest clubs.
There's a curiosity here with the sporting director role model versus the manager model. The manager buys players for today because his job's on the line. The sporting director buys players for the future because he wants to affect the club's, or look after the club's wage bill, its finance, and also for his reputation going forward. Well, I found him. So you do get that contrast. Newcastle feel like they've bought, they feel like they've bought Premier League ready players. Man United have done the same, and that feels like it's a club that's under pressure, and the manager's leading the signings. At Crystal Palace, there seems to have been a little bit more of a long-term view towards the signings, which is why they go, we can give Adam Wharton a season or two to develop and come through. Will Hughes is this remarkable player. You keep thinking it must be his time. It must be his time, and he keeps going. Was it not his header that sets up the goal for the winner against Liverpool? So it will help the fact that Adam Wharton comes into this culture. But if you can look for a player to develop and give him 2 or 3 years, because it's not easy to come into the Premier League, and we've seen that with many players, then you will find the rewards, and we start patting people on the back for being a bit more intelligent with their recruitment. Man United have spent 200 million on 3 forwards at the minute. You're thinking that's a phenomenal amount of money. Will they gel? They've changed their recruitment plan from let's go and pay £80 million for people in Holland who will take time but never settled. But yeah, a lot of things have to align for that, but it helps if you've got a sporting director who's backed by the owner and is on board a bit with the manager, I think.
Tony, you wrote about Florian Wirtz's struggles, but talk about Liverpool more broadly. So it's kind of, obviously it's been a strange start to the season for them, like perfect start, 5 wins out of 5, but a lot of late goals, a lot of kind of not managed to hold on to leads and then needing another late goal. So was this kind of a case of the chickens coming home to roost, or was this Palace so good? What do you think?
I'm a Liverpool fan, and I've talked about it a lot, and I get criticism from Liverpool fans because sometimes I talk about the club that I'm watching and supporting, and I have this idea that late goals, and this is what great teams do, they win the league because they win games late on. You know, you can't keep getting late goals in matches all of the time. They've conceded 2 goals 4 times in their 8 games. That's telling you defensively they're quite fragile. They've had new players. Kirkes is not the best left back at Liverpool. Andy Robertson still is. Okay, I thought his relationship with Gakpo was really good. Wirtz played out on the left wing on Saturday because they're trying to shoehorn Wirtz into a position because he struggled. Do I think he's not a great player? No, of course he's got. If you watch him at Bayer Leverkusen, he's a fantastic footballer, but he's struggling at Liverpool at the moment. He's finding it hard to make an impact. I saw him many a time in Germany. He'd make the run 30 yards beyond the midfield and get into forward attacking positions. He's getting caught on the ball here. He's getting caught with his little intricate passing. So, I'm watching a guy that actually at the moment shouldn't be in the 11 at Liverpool. I think Liverpool were way more... the stability of the Liverpool team was one of the reasons they won the league last year with Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, McAllister, how they perform. They've tried to fit a number 10 in that hasn't had the impact. With that, that's without the other transfers. But I do feel like there was a lot wrong. And Gary, said, Palace... They were so much the better team for long periods of that game. And it wasn't a fluke that Liverpool got beat. Liverpool have been getting away with it. And I think unless... And Arne Slot has proved that what a good manager he is, recognising I need to make certain decisions or people can't come into this side just yet. I think he's got some big decisions to make about his starting lineup. And we might go, it's, one defeat in, they've beaten Atletico. There's been signs, and I think any die-hard Liverpool fan would have to admit being top of the league now is a little bit misleading for me. They haven't played nowhere near the standard that's required. And also, isn't it ironic that the team they played against get a late goal against them? We might see a run of late goals against Liverpool now, because this happens sometimes in football. Do you know one of the big strange... Liverpool a few years ago beat Palace 7-0 away. You remember that game?
Yes.
7-0? They then played West Brom at home and then they lost their next 6 home games. And I remember talking about the Liverpool 7-0 win. It flattered them. They deserved to win and win comfortably. But it flattered them because I didn't think Liverpool were that great of a side at that time. They went on this run afterwards. I'm not hoping that. I'm just saying there are issues at Liverpool and Wirtz is one of the biggest ones.
Well, huge result for Palace. On a weekend where there were...
Can I come in there? I'm desperate for Wirtz to do well. As somebody who has loved the number 10s going back to Zico, and in this country, Peter Beardsley and Teddy Sheringham, the Premier League is increasingly about power and athleticism, and the game I'm at yesterday, it's 3 giants scoring headers. Arne Slot and Liverpool's recruitment team are trying to do something a bit different. There were flashes in the game against Madrid, and you've got to wait for Alexander Isak to get fully fit because he's a brilliant player, and I think there's been something very clever done by Liverpool there to have. We think there are 3 top strikers in the world. You cannot buy Erling Haaland, you cannot buy Kylian Mbappe, but they have gone and bought Alexander Isak. there were moments in that game against Madrid where Florian Wirtz and Alexander Isak showed memories to me of Peter Beardsley and Andy Cole. Their link-up play was really, really good. We have to give Wirtz time to adjust to this league of giants trying to kill each other. And hopefully we will. We're in game 6. We're still out of September. I didn't like the fact that he got put wide. That's such an awful thing for a manager to do, to go, yeah, you're a lovely flair player, but let's stick you out wide because it's a bit rough in the middle. So hopefully that comes. Isak could possibly have had a penalty in the second half, I think, when the crack nipped his foot just as he was about to shoot. Give them 2 time and they could be a very, very exciting partnership. There's a lot to gel in amongst the Liverpool forwards, which will take time. One of the mistakes at the minute, which I agree with Tony there, is you're not necessarily playing your best fullbacks because you're trying to take the team forward. The big problem at the minute is you've got a centre half that is looking cumbersome and doesn't particularly look like he wants to be there. And again, as Tony said, Crystal Palace targeted that and got a lot of success from that. But I desperately want Wirtz to succeed, and I think once him and Isak get moving together, that could be a very exciting partnership to watch.
Me also, Martin. It's not really just about, Wirtz is going to... I don't think he's going to foul. I just think you've got to use him and get him in the team and playing the way that suits him. And it is the number 10 role, but he's going to find it tricky because at the moment, he's really finding his feet. And... yeah, and there's some worrying signs that have happened with Wirtz in some games because he feels like they've carried him slightly.
Once Alexander Isak gets fit, and his research for a piece we did in the game and the Times for Saturday, watched Isak against Arsenal in the 3 games last season when Newcastle won the 3 games, the 2 Carabao Cup semi-finals and the league game at St James Park, and Isak gave nightmares to Gabriel and Saliba. He did everything to them. He was too strong in the air. He got behind them. He was too quick. He was too clever. Once that player re-emerges, I think that creates a lot more space for Wirtz to play in. But it's just like give Isak a bit of time to get fit, and then that can develop Wirtz. Once Isak gets fully on top of his game and starts getting his movement back and his speed back, then I think we'll see Wirtz have more possibilities to dictate the game the way we both, I think, want to see.
Yeah, no alarm bells for Liverpool just yet. But look, I was at Brighton against Chelsea this weekend, and there were moments in this game where I just kind of, sometimes you find yourself sitting back and going, "My God, this is good." And we're talking about watching Brighton against one of the bigger teams in the Premier League. Brentford's victory against Manchester United this weekend. I know it's a lowly Manchester United at the moment. Sunderland start to the season, Martin. Leeds as well. Bournemouth up to 5th with a late equaliser. I just wanted to quickly have a quick chat and see what you guys think about the strength of the league this season, because in my view, I think maybe it's never been stronger. Despite there being some big teams, big clubs, who are not what they once were, the overall strength, that was the kind of debate we had last season for a lot of the season. Is this a good league, or we just got a lot of really bad teams? I think we still have some fallen giants, but I think the league is really, really good.
Is there a weak team, Gregor?
Well, clearly Wolves and West Ham had very bad starts. I'm not sure they're really bad teams. I think they can both be rejuvenated, and we saw the start of that with Wolves. Villa had a really bad start. They've had a really good week. So, no, I think Burnley even showed spirit, and although it wasn't a 5-1 defeat against Manchester City this weekend, they still showed spirit. So I don't think there's a bad team in the league this season.
I thought the theme last season when the three sort of teams who promoted and got relegated was that their recruitment wasn't great. Ipswich's and Leicester's and Southampton's recruitment generally wasn't,
despite spending a lot of money.
And maybe the recruitment of some of the teams this year has been better. Sunderland certainly have bought a lot of players, and they've done well, and Burnley have bought some decent players, and as you say, they've got a bit of fight. So
Martin, what do you think about Sunderland's start then? I mean, it's extraordinary the number of signings they brought in, and they managed to make them gel. And although they rode their luck in this game a little bit, it's still been a great start.
What I was going to say was that it's very early in the season. You're saying everybody looks great. This might be the first couple of days by the pool on holiday where everybody's been at the gym and they're breathing in, and then they've kind of they're ignoring the all day buffet and the free bar. But by the day 13, 14, they might not necessarily look the same. Okay, so there is a bit of that. I think the fact that what Gary said there, that the three teams that have come up for the last two seasons have been so bad, that's a part of this conversation, because these three teams that have come up and been thus far have been a bit more intelligent with their recruitment. They've been a bit more intelligent with their style of play. There's none of that kind of idealism of Russell Martin at Southampton. It's pragmatic from Sunderland, and it's really working very well. They were not frightened to dismantle a team that produced the supporters with one of their great memories in that dramatic playoff final victory at Wembley against Sheffield United. So now you have a new goalkeeper in Ruffs. You have Mukiele and Alderete doing very well at centre half. Interestingly, it's still Enzo Lefebvre's back in the team. Isidore is doing well, and Chris Rigg has come in for the last two games. So the attacking side of it, Reggie Lebris, who has done an extraordinary job. I did an interview with him last season. He said for the first 2 weeks as Sunderland manager, he lived in a hotel, the Ramside Hotel, and nobody there actually knew who he was. That's how understated this bloke was, but has a great CV in working with young players. He was involved in the recruitment in the summer, along with Florence Gisolfi, and Speaking was there as well. And they kept buying, and he spoke to people at the club. They're like, we've got so much leeway in terms of PSR. I think their wage bill to get promoted was something like £16 million. But thus far they've spent well. They've added size, they've added experience. The squad feels much bigger. The game, I don't know if you saw the Nottingham Forest match. It was one of them again that somebody switches off at the far post for a free kick, and you take advantage. You score the goal. Forest threw everything at them, and you think we could be watching the game now, and Nottingham Forest still would not have scored. Nottingham Forest have got a lot of issues, by the way. Inside that game is Elliot Anderson, who we've done an interview with, who I've known since he was young, a massive Newcastle fan. And he's playing like Brian Robson, and he's prime. He's getting the ball off the centre half. He's getting off the goalkeepers in the penalty area. I think he had 97 touches to his frustration. But Sunderland was so resolute that you just could not see them conceding a goal, which if you're a Sunderland fan, I've some stats, I can't find them. Have I got them? I think 3 or 4 of the last seasons they've been promoted around 2011, 2012. Add them together, they've not got as many points from August and September as they have in this season alone. So it's been a brilliant start from them. They won't get carried away. Lebris won't get carried away, as I said. Spent time with them, quite dry, good sense of humour. But, he wants his team to be competitive and compact. No idealism about the way they play. It's about results, and thus far they're doing really well.
That's a big part of it, I think, Tony, as well. I mean, you look at the way Brentford scored their 3 goals against Manchester United. They're like, very direct. One was a great break at the end. But others were long balls. Thiago out-muscling the defender. Quick attacks. There's a lot of long throw-ins. You referenced them. We did a column earlier this season about it. Do you think that kind of that way that the kind of evolution of the game this season is kind of flipping a bit, is maybe giving teams a better chance as well?
I also would say, and it'd be interesting to see what you boys think of this, I think the level of coaching and management has gone to way beyond the past in what we've seen. I've seen so many managers have big staffs. They're working really hard on small data that gives them an opportunity for fine margins to win them games. I think the coaching level's gone up. And, the Premier League pays the most money for players. So the Premier League has wasted lots over the years. But now you're getting coaches that are coming in who are getting big wages from leaving other leagues, whether it's France, Italy or wherever, the Netherlands. They come in and they're way more info-based. And also they can communicate really well. I think if you go for all the teams, when you see Aston Villa 5th from bottom, we all know Unai Emery is a really good manager, okay? He's found himself in 5th from bottom because the top end of the club, they found themselves subject to financial fair play, which has caused them problems, as in they lose certain players and they can't go after ones they might want. And they're the difference in managers, of what they can do. And I think we've seen coaches, and we've mentioned before, look at why. We talk about, you say how many teams are doing well. Bournemouth are doing the same again as they did last year. They go and get results under a good manager with a structure. Brighton can go to Chelsea and get a result. It's not just a one-off in 10 seasons. They've caused Chelsea problems for a good few seasons. So I just think you've got to give kudos to management's really hard. You can lose your job so easily. After 6, 7, 8, 10 games, you can lose your job. But if you look at teams that have looked disorganised, and I know we're going to talk about them a bit later, as Manchester United, Amorim feels he's way behind a lot of the other coaches for me of what we're seeing, of the tactics that teams are using. Keith Andrews is supposedly just a set piece coach at Brentford. He's obviously got a lot more than that, and Brentford know that better than we do.
Well, he has his team playing to its strengths. I think that's
exactly
the thing that really emerged from this game.
Yeah.
You can talk about Manchester United if you like now.
What did you make of Brighton? Because obviously they've dropped a couple of late points this season against Fulham and Spurs.
Spurs, yeah.
That's 4 points. I mean, they're on 8 points. So, I mean, and they had that problem sort of last season as well at times, of not seeing games out. What do you make of them, Gregor?
I mean, the first half, you have to say Chelsea were really, really good. The sending off to Trevoh Chalobah just after half-time changed the game, dramatically. But another, reason for having this discussion is that they turned to the bench and it had enormous effect. Danny Welbeck scored 2 of the goals. Maxim de Kuyper scored the other. Weaver, who came on, got an assist. Gruda, who came on, got an assist. Like, there was just... That's the other thing, it's the strength of every team's squads. Even, at Brighton, we know about their recruitment model, but everywhere you look, there is such strength in depth as well. I just feel like there's possibly a bit of a levelling up happening here. I don't know, maybe I'm taking it too far. What do you think?
Well, I go back to Hunsler's done a hell of a job, really, since he's come to Brighton, hasn't he? He came in at the job, and we were there last season a couple of times, Gregor. Again, a manager can make changes, have choice. But there are so many good ones at the moment. Look, there was always going to be someone lose his job. If you're laying bottom of the league or you're a big club that's struggling at the wrong end of the table, you can lose your job. But I just think generally the Premier League has a massive advantage with finance. Regards to all levels, whether it's players, transfers you can bring in, has such a big advantage. And now you've seen coaches come in that have raised the game again, or raised the bar of the standard at Premier League clubs. And the Premier League clubs that got promoted, kudos to them, because they've spent big. But Daniel Farke's learned a lot, for me, from the last time he was in the Premier League and really struggled.
He's talking about physicality.
He changed the idea of Leeds. So fair play to them.
Sorry, with regards to Daniel Farke, I've been in a few interviews with him when he spoke about the Norwich team. I think he's a good bloke. I think he's very honest. I do like the way his teams play football, but he's addressed that in the nicest way possible when he said those Norwich teams. He said those players that we took to promotion had never played in the Premier League before we got promotion, and they never played again after we got relegated. So he took a bunch of players that were not of that standard. They didn't invest. They went back down. But it's his reputation that suffers, and it's there was that huge rumour in the summer. Would Mourinho come in? Do you remember that? And it was quite disrespectful to Farke. He would have liked, I think, more investment in the front part of his team this summer. He lost Solomon, who was brilliant for them last season. But they may have made 2 very clever signings from inside the game. Calvert-Lewin, if he's fit, is a great centre forward, and he missed a couple of chances the weekend. And Sean Longstaff, who has 200 games of experience with Newcastle, creates chances on Saturday, creates the goal, scores a goal, and Leeds fans are saying, we got this player for 12 million. Sometimes those bargains are within the domestic game if you're clever with your recruitment. And it will depend upon keeping Calvert-Lewin fit, but he looks strong, he looks good. Those 2 players stay fit, that gives them a great chance of staying up this season.
Okay. Loads more to come after the break. We'll be discussing that thriller at St James's Park, the change in the dugout at West Ham United, and a big week in store for Enzo Maresca and Chelsea. Join us after the break. Welcome back to the Game Podcast from The Times. I'm Gregor Robertson alongside Tony Cascarino, Gary Jacob and Martin Hardy. To St James's Park now. Arsenal came from behind to win at St James's Park thanks to Mikel Merino's 84th minute equaliser and Gabriel's 96th minute winner. Martin, a tough one to take for the Geordies. Very tough indeed. But reading your match report in the Times, you also kind of said this was a big statement for Arsenal as well, given the results there in the past and their start to the season.
No, this feels like a huge moment for Arsenal. I think they've been quite unfair the way they've been picked at this season. to say they're not ready for the title. I looked at the strengthening and I thought they're doing fine. They've only conceded 2 goals before they went to St James's Park yesterday. Two moments stick out with reference to that. One is when there was the fly in the wall video and Arsenal lost at St James's Park, and Arteta went through his players and talked about the mental toughness to come somewhere like here and get a result, because they didn't have it. Okay, there was then a moment in the semi-final last season at St James's Park, which didn't get caught on camera. It was right in front of the press box, where Sandro Tonali came into Martin Odegaard really, really hard, probably left a little bit in it and hurt. You know, you get kicked on the foot by a professional footballer, and it was right in front of us, and Odegaard was down. And Arteta came on and kind of dragged him by the hand to get up. You know, get up, don't show them you're hurt, don't show them you're hurt. Odegaard's going, yeah, but I am hurt, I can't even feel my foot. The crowd's going wild. Arteta's looking for something more than just you're a brilliant player. It's like, right, you've got to stand up to this place. Yesterday, whatever way the goals came, whether it was from a penalty that didn't get allowed, whether it was the 84th minute, whether it was the 96th minute, Arsenal deserved to get something from that game. They probably deserved to win. They, in contrast to, say, perhaps what I've just said about Nottingham Forest could still be playing against Sunderland, Arsenal have added, they've got more weapons now. So, yes, they can score from a throw-in, which sometimes I don't like. Yes, they can score from corners, which sometimes I don't like. But they've also got Odegaard and Declan Rice and Saka and Martinelli. So if you want to play them at football, they'll come and have a game with you. But if you want to make it physical, they'll have a game with you. And yesterday was the first time I think I've watched them come to St James's Park. The crowd, the atmospheres at St James's Park this season for Barcelona, for Liverpool and for Arsenal have been brilliant. Sometimes there can be a bit of hype about an atmosphere. These have been absolutely red raw, raucous occasions on Tyneside. And Arsenal losing 1-0 and the crowd's going bananas, and they stood up to it. And Arteta, which I've mentioned in the match report, did like a windmill with his fists when he equalised to Mourinho, and you thought, that's it. And then when they scored the winning goal, he just turned to his bench and was engulfed by, as Tony said, this huge backroom staff, because they know how big a moment that is, because you've come to Tyneside, you've took them on, you've won it late, you've showed great spirit. Gabriel's had this battle with Nick Voltemade, was really weak for the goal, but then maybe he could have had a yellow card for the hand in the forward's face. The one thing I would say about Gabriel is he's a bit Torval without Dean when Saliba's not next to him, because in that first half he struggled. Saliba comes on at half time, and the Arsenal defensive shape and how strong it was changed a great deal in that time. And Newcastle didn't create a great deal in the second half to trouble them. Newcastle is a different story on this. With Arsenal, I think we're talking about a team that can go all the way this season if they want to. The squad's got bigger. I'm still not 100% convinced of the quality of Gyökeres, but what he did, he took the physicality of Sven Botman and Malik Chow. He has the fight with them too. That means the two centre-halves are occupied. It gives a bit more space for the other flair players around him in which to play. And Zubimendi, who I thought was a great player anyway, comes in and he was really good yesterday. But English football is such that, yeah, he's a sitting player. He's going to be a Rodri. In the second half, he's in the penalty area, the Newcastle penalty area. He's doing crosses. He's trying to score goals. It's like, you come to this country, the football is so chaotic. You're going to have to do a little bit more than that. Might be to the detriment of the English team, but in terms of entertainment value, that game yesterday had everything.
Gary, do you agree? Martin's saying that this was a big statement, and he feels that Arsenal can go all the way, despite the whole kind of narrative at the start of the season that they've been, handbrake on, not creative enough, a bit like risk averse. Do you see that differently?
I think over time, Mikel has been risk averse. I think it's hard for him to kind of deny that criticism. He has been over the last few years. The team evolved to become a bit more risk averse from a few seasons ago. But I thought when he brought on Odegaard yesterday, he went for it really, and maybe it was a criticism that he'd had in previous weeks. Maybe it was an overreaction to some of the criticisms against Man City, or maybe he just realised he actually, after Liverpool was losing, he actually needs to make that statement, and they need to make a statement to themselves more than anything. So I thought it was a really important win. I still think he has to work out about what his best lineup is. I'm still not, playing Trossard. I think most Arsenal fans probably wouldn't want Trossard in the team, and they'd want a slightly different balance to it. I think it's interesting how he's Martin was talking about the sort of the physical players, that he's pretty much played Calafiori all the games over Miles Lewis Skelly. I mean, Lewis Skelly wasn't a left back. I mean, people have to remember he was a midfield player who got converted, but he got
and
an
you're going to
England
St
squad.
James's Park, a big physical game,
and he's played him Timber at right back over White. They're all they're all physical players. These are big boys. Declan's a tall guy. Even when Havertz plays, he's not short and he's bulked up a little bit. So the only real midget is probably Trossard. Sorry, he's one of the few players actually shorter than me in the mix enough.
Sorry, Gary's made an interesting point there about height. Eddie Howe was with us, and he said when they signed Jacob Ramsey, they were surprised at how tall he was. They're going, bloody hell, you're tall. He went, oh, me, I'm 6'1". And then on another video, it shows you Graham Jones and Jason Tyndall, the two backroom staff, when they've just signed Malik Chow, who's 6'4" centre. They're both banging him on the chest and going, "Ooh, you're a big lad, aren't you? You're a big lad." Yeah. So, and when you're watching that handshake at the start of Premier League games now, it's giant meeting giant meeting giant. And it's interesting what Gary's saying. I think there is a deeper conversation about the pragmatic approach of Pep Guardiola and Mikel Arteta from two coaches that were probably idealistic 4 or 5 years ago, and it was all fluid football and false tens. Either they've, it's not reinventing the wheel, but they've taken English football back to the past, or they've just gone, the game has evolved, and here for the physicality, so teams that are going to come up are going to give us a real battle, and so we need bigger players to combat this. And as I said before, there were 3 goals yesterday in a game of football with 2 teams that probably cost well over £1 billion is by 3 headed goals from crosses.
Yeah. I think Mikel probably reacted to the 4-1 defeat a few years ago against City, you both remember, and they were going for the title, and he had Rob Holding at the back, fell apart, and he reacted to that game where they were just beaten up, basically. And I remember a quote from Lehmann many years ago in the Invincible team. He said, they'd be in the tunnel, and opposing teams would look across and just look at Lauren, Campbell, Lehmann, they're all physical. You both played.
I
must have looked.
I'm going to go nostalgic here. Right? Playing World Cup 1990, and Jack Charlton is saying, we're watching the Cameroon play, and he went, "We don't want to get them. We can't get them. They'll beat us. They're more physical than us." And then, of course, they played England. Yeah. And England just about got through, didn't they, against them? It was an amazing game. I think Platt scores a goal. But, just that the Cameroon was so big and strong. And that was what the Ireland team was. And I've played against teams that are really physical and strong. Yeah, of course, it does have an impression on you. But what I do think was really interesting out of that game, and obviously Martin's there live, so that helps, is that I even feel like referees going a bit more lenient now, because we had a lot of controversial decisions, didn't we, in the game, Martin? But they defended the more physical. When Pope comes out and gets a slight touch and Gyökeres goes down, you get the sense that maybe managers are also thinking, do you know what, we might get a little bit more get away with the intricacies of football, of fouls, The
first 10 minutes, whether it carries across the TV, the tackles were flying in. And the tackles were flying in a lot from the Newcastle players because we're right next to the dugout. So you watch Arteta goes from fury to bemusement because it's like, right, this is how it's going to be. Think you can get away with stuff. Calafiori, who's been booked, tugs on the shirt of Dan Burn to the point where it's like it's coming out of his back by about 2 foot. And he has a yellow card at that point. It's not even a foul. Within about 5 minutes, it's one of them where Arteta sneakily takes Calafiori off before he gets a second yellow. But the way that game went, the player that he brings on is Mikel Mourinho. So he brings him on within a quarter of an hour. He scores this brilliant glance header at the far post to beat Nick Pope. But yeah, the physicality of the game, so much. Maybe it's because the game's so fast. Maybe it's because the players are so huge. But there seemed a lot of challenges that maybe a year or 2 ago would have got called.
Yeah.
That in the robustness of the match, the referee was just waving the game on.
Martin, just finally on this game then, you wrote before the game about where are Newcastle going to get the goals from. We've spoken about Isak's departure and the sort of hole in the team that left up front. This was a big moment for Nick Voltemade as well. I mean, he's obviously got a couple of goals, but what do you make of his sort of all-round play as well? He feels like he has to get up to speed a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, the first game he played against Wolves, we're watching Eddie Howe and Tyndall. urging him to move further forward in the pitch, right? So his natural inclination as a 10 is to drop 10, 15 yards away from the centre halves. You're going to have to engage them now, is the message. In the press conference on Friday with Eddie Howe, he went, look, we don't play with a number 10, which Newcastle don't. So they're going to have to try and alter his game to be more physical, to be on that last man. The Visa injury, which is in the piece that you referenced there, has been huge because his stats, when we went through them from last season, were very, very similar aside the dribbles to Alexander Isak. That's the direct replacement that Newcastle were looking for. There's a serious injury to Tino Livramento, who went off on a stretcher. We don't know how bad that is yet. That will be a blow because he's been very good. That impacts the style. So Dan Burns playing as a left back yesterday because the manager doesn't want to drop Sven Botman, who's another left-sided centre-half. But that curtails the natural instinct of Anthony Gordon because he's got to cover Dan Burn against Saka. Joe Linton's sitting a little bit deeper. So the team still feels like it's in a transitionary period. It's 1 win from 6 in the Premier League, heading towards a Champions League game in Brussels on Wednesday night. I think there'll start to be a bit of a cause for concern because it's not like Newcastle are missing loads of chances at the minute. They're not creating them. Somehow you're going to have to find the blend of Elanga, Voldemada and Anthony Gordon at the same time without, you're going to have to do something of that, how many centre halves they're going to play, because it does impact what they do going forwards. But yeah, a massive match on Sunday to come against Nottingham Forest, who've won none under 5 under Postecoglou, and Eddie Howe's got 1 win and 6 in the Premier League. So yeah, that is potentially a really, really big game.
Okay, before a ball was kicked, Gary,
Yes.
Graham Potter was dismissed by West Ham United with Nuno Espirito Santo replacing him. Potter took charge of 25 matches at West Ham after being appointed in January, won only 6. Finished 14th last season, but only 1 win this season. West Ham said they believe a change is necessary in order to help improve the team's position in the Premier League table as soon as possible, probably because of all the things we've just been speaking about. They recognise this year that there's not really any standout team that's going to be, propping up the table, so it could be a dangerous season for them, Gary. If they this is why they've made the change early, basically.
I think when they had Lopetegui there, he kind of lasted a little bit longer because there were 3 teams you can pretty much bank on to kind of go down. But I think you look at it now and you think that they could suddenly be a gap if you don't make the change. And also, it's just not worked out, and that's not. There'd be plenty of people, myself included, said he was the wrong man for them and it was a wrong club for him. So
why'd you say that?
Wrong club for him because he'd been out of the game nearly 2 years. He turned down Ajax. He flirted with Leicester. There were good reasons to go to Leicester. West Ham's not an easy club to go and manage because you have to manage up as well as down. And David Moyes is very good at doing that. And I think you have to be a certain type of guy to do that. I think also, the benefit he had at Brighton was Bloom's modelling of players and other sorts of things, which he doesn't get at West Ham. And for them, I think they needed probably a little bit more of a. Also, his teams don't score goals generally. They didn't do it at Brighton, so that's a big problem. And I think for them, they probably needed a slightly different manager, really. So, they had the ideal manager in David Moyes. I know it went wrong in the last 6 months, but you could argue there are reasons why it was going to go wrong in the last 6 months. So
is Nuno the right manager?
Needs must. Yeah, I think he's going to be pragmatic, like Martin says, and he's going to make them into kind of a team that's going to be difficult to beat and play on the counter attack. And
does that not potentially open up all the same sort of issues among the fan base about wanting to see something more?
I think it does. It does down the line, but probably in the short term, it means we just need to kind of make sure we kind of stay up, really. The thing is that they actually they made a decision last week after Palace. It's pretty much then he was dead man walking. But you look at it, you think, what are the choices? And it's probably the same for Man United. What are the choices? It's Bilic. There's Nuno, and like Martin was saying, well, you could go for Glasner, but Glasner he's not going to go, and he's not going to he's not going to go anywhere, I don't think, mid-season. So what are the choices really for any Premier League club now that's changing? You've got people like Sean Dyche on the sidelines, people like that. But so where are the choices?
Well, it's someone unknown. And
or
it's a
someone
risk.
unknown, and it's a risk, you know.
Tony, what do you make of the appointment?
No.
to you, Simon.
Yeah, sorry. Well, you obviously you look at Tottenham and you think it didn't work out there. Then you look at Nottingham Forest and it was brilliant for him, and he had a style of play. And as Martin has said, he got recruited the club very well. People like Anderson coming into the football club and doing well. You know, Chris Wood fitted their style. Hudson-Odoi, Elanga. You know, all these type of players that had come in and done brilliantly well. That's without even mentioning the back four, the goalkeeper. They said lots of positions they got right. Now, it's going to be a massive challenge at West Ham because there's a different type
They
of
don't get
own.
it right.
No, but Nottingham Forest, whatever we say about Marinakis, is that he bought lots of players and it will come from different parts of the world and really aggressive. So he could change because he bought so many. He could change quite often. If the manager needed more players, he will give them. And I think it's a really interesting one, but it is going back to what Gary said, to a far more pragmatic style and counter-attacking. Do West Ham have that player? Well, I think that sort suits someone like Bowen. But generally, it's going to be a challenge for him because West Ham are a club that's in disarray, not just on the pitch, upstairs as well. And they don't have a leader like Marinakis who would demand this to happen. If it, they've been taking a back seat by. I couldn't get Graham Potter at all, and I'd done a piece on this a long time ago about I didn't get, and it's nothing against Graham, but I just didn't see a fit there at all. And he has, as Gary's alluded to, he has a very much a possession-based style with not much punch. It's about keeping the ball, and they didn't even keep the ball very well. You know, but there wasn't much of a punch in their counter-attack. And if they
Needs a lot of pace.
if they didn't have Bowen, in any of the seasons he was there, they'd have gone down.
Go on, Martin.
Martin, go on.
Sorry, Tony, which I agree with about the game changing, it's all scientific. But we come back to 2 summers of terrible recruitment. The fans turn on the board. What do the board do? They sack the manager because it gets the grief off them in the short term. I'm just looking through the managers here. You go, they've gone from Bilic to Moyes to Pellegrini, then back to Moyes, then to Lopetegui, then to Potter, then to Nuno. And I don't think there's anything at all that connects that group of managers in terms of style or personality or anything. I was at West Ham's first game of the season against Sunderland, and straight away I think I wrote the piece that he's in trouble here because they were awful. You're relying on Callum Wilson, who was a second or third choice at Newcastle last season. It was a free transfer coming on. You're relying on Ward Prowse, who was a great player but looks like his legs are going. The keeper was terrible. The 3 centre-halves couldn't command anything at all. So I thought he was in trouble. That stadium doesn't help, and the vastness of that stadium, and now you bring in Nuno, who will say, sorry, in terms of stylistic change, Graham Potter, we want the ball. Nuno, we don't want the ball. So you've gone from one style to another style. You're going to say to the players, right, everything the previous manager said, rip that up. We're starting again from scratch because there's no coherent strategy inside this football club. We're just making it up as we go along. Nuno's style will not sit well with the West Ham supporters. I'll tell you that now. The recruitment, which again Tony's mentioned there, to find Elanga, Anderson, Gibbs-White, and Hudson-Odoi, which meant you could sit really deep and play with superb speed on the counter-attack. So it made the counter-attack more interesting than it sometimes is. Will be very hard to do it at West Ham. I see this ending. Am I the prophet of doom this morning? In a West Ham stadium that is empty, and because it's 1-0 or 0-0 after 85 minutes, and they're doing nothing at all going forward with the ball. I'm not sure this is a great fit. It strikes me very much as a panic move, and it'd be interesting to see where West Ham go through it.
Okay. Just finally, another manager, maybe Tony, who's starting to come under a little bit of pressure, is Enzo Maresca. After another defeat, it's not been a good month for Chelsea at all. Big week ahead. Got Benfica and the return of Jose Mourinho on Tuesday in the Champions League. And then Liverpool on Saturday. He doesn't want to have another bad week, does he?
I can't make out Chelsea. Of all the teams that are a bit of an enigma, it's Chelsea, because I've seen them be brilliant.
They were brilliant in the first half in this game.
Yeah,
honestly.
exactly. Well, I was about to say,
Outstanding.
first 45 minutes on the weekend. But if you consider that was the team that beat PSG 3-0 in the World Club Championship. And I've seen them, last year I was at Crystal Palace. I think you were with me, Gregor. Might have been you. I think it was you. But anyway, Chelsea played there. And Chelsea for 75 minutes were great in the game. It was 1-0 to Chelsea, and then they conceded a late goal, and from that moment on they looked like losing against Palace last season. And I've seen Chelsea do this so often, where they play for large periods either very well or well enough to get a result, and somehow they find a way of giving away points. And then I think that's a problem for Maresca. But he has made some very strange substitutions, because Manchester United away, seeing Neto come off, and people talked about Cole Palmer. I was like, what is the one person you want to keep on when you're with 10 men is a Neto that's going to stretch, keep the ball, and take the ball down the pitch and still be a threat. He's taken him off twice when they've gone down to 10 men. And that will rile Chelsea fans. And Chelsea fans have been spoiled. I've got two sons, and I have to keep reminding them that I played in a really bad Chelsea team, or very mediocre, okay? And they've been spoiled with the Chelsea teams they've supported, because it's completely different. So that there is this entitlement by Chelsea fans of expecting Champions League football, challenging to win things, the money that they've spent.
Well, I was just going to say they should probably expect that
Exactly.
when you spent 1.5 billion in
But
3
yeah,
years.
I know. But the fact of the matter is, on the day, Chelsea are a really good side.
Yeah.
It's just that they don't have them days that often for not. I say hardly ever for 90 minutes.
Two things, Greg, because you're
Sorry, can I just jump in? Tony, you watch a lot of Chelsea. Is he the right manager?
Is he the right manager? That's a really divided opinion at the Bridge.
I mean, he
How
bought
about
himself.
inside your house?
Sorry.
How about inside your house, Tony?
Divided opinion.
My house would be typical of the view of Chelsea fans is that if they lose a game, they want him out, and if they win a game, they'll stay with him.
More than football,
Yeah, exactly. So I personally think he's got a lot to prove, because when you have so much being given to you as a manager, indulging in so many transfers, that you have to find a way at work. When you look at Cole Palmer and you look at Neto and you look at Pedro down the middle, and you think, this is a dangerous team. You've got Fernandes and Calcido in midfield. I think they're lacking at the heart of the defence, but generally they have enough to go and win games. And I think he's got to answer them questions, because there's no way if they don't make Champions League football, he'll be in a job next year.
Gregor, you're doing the game this week, and you did the game Saturday. Yeah. Was there anything he could have done differently on Saturday once they went down to 10 men? Because some teams are very good with 10 men, aren't they? Let's be honest. Arsenal in the past have been very good at sort of reshaping themselves. Look at the Man City game last year.
Look, I slightly disagree with this whole idea that he's made some really defensive substitutions. I think that's what you're supposed to do when you go down to 10 men.
What, you go 5 at the back and then no one up front?
They had someone up front. They just didn't have Neto.
But you never created.
I understand, but I think that's a bit harsh. I think actually this bigger issue is when they went down to 10 men on Saturday, he had two 19-year-olds played centre half. He brought in Josh Achimpong ahead of Barry Ashila because he's not good enough. Like, I still think the thing they lack, and I wrote about this morning, is some leaders, some people who know how to see out a game like that, who've lived it, who've done it before. Like, they just find no room. There's just this really arrogant blind spot in their whole recruitment model of just completely overlooking anyone who's over the age of 23. So, I think Tosin's turned 28 last week, and he's their oldest player. And I've got a few 27-year-olds.
I would agree with you on that, Gregor. I do think that's a valid point.
So I think he'll always be trying to find leadership that is not there.
And you wouldn't want to be placing Jose, who would be quite happy to stick the knife.
Indeed, this will be a fascinating one. So anyway, we'll be it'll be box office that on Tuesday. I'm sure Mourinho is always box office, and we will be back on Thursday to review that and all the midweek European action. I hope to see you then.